Greetings from Trainwizard. I'm Michael, your host. Many of my viewers and followers have frequently asked me about how I managed to nail some good action shots with manual focus, especially with a shallow depth of field. This is the Samyang 135mm f2 prime lens. Because of a fast f2 aperture, low light sensitivity is improved compared to most medium telephoto lenses. But the best part is the very thin depth of field that renders beautiful beads of lights called bokeh and buttercreamy blurred backgrounds. Most photographers will use this lens for portraits, but I use it, as I do with all my lenses, for railfanning. The depth of field is so thin that large subjects such as buses, trains, and cars look like miniature models, a look I favor in my shots, which we'll get to later. Most of us may prefer autofocus for our needs, but manual focus is a great skill to learn. Manual focus is better for video recording, allowing for smoother footage, especially when changing focus, as well as minimal noise from the parts in the lens if you're using the internal microphone. The focus ring is dampened, allowing for very smooth focusing. Most of us will prefer autofocus for portrait and action photography and will invest accordingly. I chose to go with the Samyang because I've trained myself for many years with manual focus tricks, more on that in a bit, and Samyang makes some great quality manual focus lenses. 5 years ago, I posted a video on my YouTube channel reviewing the Bell & Howell 85mm f1.4 manual focus lens. Link is in the description if you care to put up with the crappy audio. Samyang produced that lens, indeed even the ones rebranded as Rokinon. The sharpness of the Samyang 135 f2, as well as its identical Rokinon copy, is worth every penny, as such prime lenses should be. It could easily rival the similar but insanely expensive Zeiss manual focus lenses in sharpness. You can see the finest details on everything that is in focus, while the unfocused areas are thrown into a creamy blur. You can also use this on an APS-C camera, such as the Nikon D3000, 5000, and 7000 series, with a focal length equivalent of 202mm. Remember, if you want buttery smooth background separation, telephoto ranges are your friend, especially when paired with such a fast aperture. f2 is also light sensitive, so you can shoot wide open in low light situations. Using this lens at night is easy because I don't always have to use a tripod to get bright pictures of streetscapes, of course at the expense of some depth. The 9-blade diaphragm inside the lens makes good starbursts on specular headlights when you stop down to smaller apertures such as f11 to 22. But of course you may want to use a tripod with those settings at night because those apertures are much less light sensitive. As you stop down, you'll get more depth of field and near magical sharpness, which makes this lens great for telephoto landscapes, cityscapes, and long exposures. This is probably why you clicked on this video. Many of you asked how I managed to capture fast action, self-portraits, and candid street photography with manual focus lenses with such narrow depths of field. The popular method is to use live view and a tripod for precision, but what if I told you you could handhold, shoot in burst, and still get keepers at f2? It is a game of coordination that takes lots of practice and trial and error. I've practiced manual focus on trains for over 7 years, and in my opinion, if you can capture an Acela Express with a manual focus lens wide open, you can capture almost anything with it. You can move your focus point around to where you want, but I like using the center point, since it's usually the most accurate focus point. You can rely on small arrows and a dot in the bottom of your viewfinder to lock the focus where your focus point is. You can also turn the focus ring slowly, thank goodness for Samyang's ring dampening, and attempt to follow the subject as you do the spray and pray method. I do that for unpredictable motion such as birds in flight, although rarely so since I also have autofocus lenses. Ironically, I've gotten more wildlife in motion keeper shots using manual focus. For self-portraits, you may use a timer or remote while you pose near the area you pre-focused on. For predictable motion, such as cars or trains, you can wait until just before it reaches the spot you pre-focused on. Then you can shoot continuous shots. At least one picture will be guaranteed sharp. This is assuming your burst rate is at least 5 or more frames a second, and it also depends on how fast your subject is moving. You'll probably take multiple shots with only one keeper, or even none at first, but it's worth the skill when you nail the shot. Do not attempt this method at a professional shoot if you're not comfortable with your manual focus skills. Invest in an autofocus lens and some carrot juice. The vitamin A is good for your vision. Stay tuned by subscribing to me, Trainwizard, and also leave me your feedback in the comments. If you wish to support my channel, consider joining as my patron on Patreon. Link in the description.